those are tough acts to follow. And, I thank you, Skip and Stephen, and commend you guys, the kids, for an amazing job. I'm going to try to get through this. So I was running out of the house today, trying to get everybody ready and learning all that whole thing and keeping the girls on schedule. I forgot my crying towel. And that, I have an Uncle Jim, and he used to refer to a crying towel kind of metaphorically, as you went to go get your crying towel kind of thing. Well, after Trish was diagnosed, I took a stack of white towels from the hospital and literally used them as a crying towel, carrying them around. I've kept one of those with me. I meant to bring it up here today. I've got some Kleenex, but please bear with me if I need to slow down. And I might, and that's okay. All right, we're going to cry. I want to tell a few stories about Trish that I think kind of symbolize what she was all about and share what I and so many of you love so much about her. And also I've got a few words for the kids, because when this is done, we'll be going on with our life without Trish. Trish and I met at the Delt House, of all places, at a Delt Chi-O TG. And if you're not familiar with TG, that's a thank goodness it's Friday party on an afternoon. Trish and I also had a class together at that time, so we knew who each other were. She knew who I was because it was constitutional history, and I was in the front of the class answering all the questions and being a goofball. She was more towards the back, just looking hot. We knew who each other were and got to talking at the party. I was president of the fraternity at that time, and that's only relevant because I could get my hands on the checkbook, and what was supposed to be just an afternoon party, I was able to extend longer into the evening. My friend Kenny, who is sitting right over there, was the treasurer. He later made me pay that back. Which it was the best money I ever spent, because I got to spend more time with Trish. We then began dating, and I wish I could say it was all smooth sailing from there, but it wasn't, because Trish dumped me not too long after. And she didn't tell me that we were breaking up. She just suddenly disappeared. And in those days, there weren't cell phones that everyone carried around. If I wanted to get a hold of Trish, I had to call the house number at the Chi-O house, and someone had to find her and get her on the phone. And as I see the Chi-Os here, and last night, I'm sure they were in on the conspiracy, but Trish suddenly couldn't be found to take my call. Eventually, I tracked her down, and sure enough, she just wanted to be friends. Well, you know me, I can accept that. But I had to ask her, nonetheless. I said, well, what's that mean? How are we going to just be friends? We're going to, hang out at the co-rec? How's this friendship going to work? And we had this conversation in the union at Purdue, and her definition that we've always laughed about and used later was, we could meet at Harry's, but not at Edo's. Edo's, we know what Harry's is. It's more of a social, hanging around bar, but Edo's was more of the dancing, kind of where couples would get together type of. Well, I understood that, the parameters that she had set, and I moved on with my life. Had many other options, of course. The next semester, at Edo's, of all places, I saw Trish. We got to talking and fell in love. Fell in love and really were never apart since. There came a week at the Delt House when we had to lock the doors and get all the friends and anyone else out of there except for the Delts. And Trish was used to being there all the time, but not during this week. So she was sent out, and we continued on with our Delt activities. And then when everyone was allowed back, the guys had put up a banner in the Delt House, "Welcome back, Trish." They had become so used to seeing her. Trish and I, sometime near the end of our senior year, I was offered a job that would take me to California. And as I started thinking about our future and where we might end up, I knew that I could not go to California without Trish. And the day I got the offer, I asked Trish to marry me. She said yes immediately. We went to Service Merchandise, took out an $1,100 credit account, and bought rings. That was pretty much how things continued on for our life and planning and right up until the very end. At the wedding, which was on October 7, 1989, a good friend of mine, V.K. Jones, sang at that wedding, one of my fraternity brothers, sang "Morning Has Broken," and it signified the start of Trish and I's life together. Later on, another very good friend of mine, Boyd Davis, and husband of one of Trish's sorority sisters, Jana, will sing "Morning Has Broken" here, signifying the start of our new life without Trish. After the wedding, we opened our gifts. We loaded everything we could fit into my red Trans Am and drove to California. That was our honeymoon, driving to our new home in California with a couple of stops along the way. Our good friend Perry had made a cassette tape for us with songs about love and friends and leaving home. And now, we make song lists or playlists, and I guess kids still sometimes make CDs, but back then, of course, we had cassettes. Well, we listened to that cassette over and over, and as Trish always said, we cried all the way to St. Louis. Music was always very important to Trish and I. Neither of us could play an instrument or sing a note, but we didn't let that stop us. We sang a lot, and we danced, and we gathered often with our friends, and we played the music loud. Trish and I made cassettes for each other in college. We bought each other CDs. We later made CDs for each other when that glorious technology came along. And most recently, we made playlists for each other. The technology changed and evolved, but the sentiment was always the same. The music spoke to us, and we found meaning in the lyrics of songs as if they had been written just for us. And I see our kids doing the same thing today. You just heard Jake started off with a quote from Coldplay that have some lyrics that have meaning for him, and I see the girls doing it all the time, tweeting certain lyrics. They have Coldplay and John Mayer, we had Springsteen and U2, Mellencamp and REM. And depending on when you were closest to Trish and I, whether it was when we were first dating and married, or as we were raising small kids in the 90s, or lately as Trish was battling cancer, you know at least some of the songs that we held dear. Morning Has Broken, The End of the Innocents, All I Want Is You, Landslide, Shiny Happy People, of course, and lately Beautiful Day, to name just a few. But after Trish was diagnosed with cancer, the songs became even more profound, the lyrics deeper and even more meaningful. And I'm not just talking about the country songs that are about cancer. I'm talking about, those will kill you every time. Doesn't take a whole lot of consideration to get what's going on in those, but others we found meaning in as well. And suddenly the songs that we'd listened to 1,000 times had new meanings, and the emotions they generated were turned up to 11. After Trish was diagnosed, we both each made a playlist separately, independently, not mentioning to each other. Trish's playlist was called Summer of 2011. I found it recently on her phone. Mine was called 2011-05 Tunes. The funny thing was, about 2/3 of the songs were the same. Out of the thousands and thousands of songs we had to choose from, we had mostly chosen the same ones to get us through this. Okay, so where were we? We were in that red Trans Am headed for California. Trish and I had a lot of fun in California. We took scuba diving lessons. We went to the beach, we went to Hollywood, the mountains. We had a lot of visitors. We took trips to Las Vegas, which was just a few hours away. But we were both very homesick. We wanted to be near our friends and our family all the time. So when I began looking and applying to law schools and I was admitted to Notre Dame, the choice was easy and obvious. Trish and I, after 2 years in California, returned home to South Bend. Trish got a job with May Company and was a department manager at an Ellis Ayres. Trish loved that job, working with fashion and helping women find the right clothes. At least she loved that job until Alexa came along. Alexa was born in my second year of law school, And in law school, I had a class for a couple hours a day, maybe a little reading, but I could just spend the rest of the time with Alexa. Trish, meanwhile, was headed off to work each day, where she would stand on her feet in a department store and try to get people to buy ladies' clothes. It pained her to be away from Alexa. And each day she would rush home, eager to just hold Alexa, love her, and take care of her. Since time began, men and women have debated why we are here. What is the point of this life, this time we have to spend here on earth? What is our purpose? What is our very reason for being? And I won't pretend that I know the answer for everyone, but I know the answer for Trish. Trish's purpose in this life was simply to be a great mom. That was her life's ambition. She devoted herself fully and entirely, each and every moment of every day, to her children. Her dream, her goal, her passion was just to raise great kids. That was all she ever wanted. After Molly was born and I graduated from law school, I was proud that Trish could leave the paid workforce and devote herself entirely to her passion, which was just raising the kids. Trish's life has clearly been cut short. She would have had much more time here on this earth. She should have had much more time to relax and reflect and enjoy her accomplishments. Time for a victory lap, time for a trip to Disney World after the Super Bowl. Trish won't have that. But I'm proud that in the time Trish did have, she could devote herself fully and entirely to her passion, raising her kids. So after law school, we moved to Mundelein, a suburb of Chicago. I took the train into the city each day, and Trish stayed home with Alexa and Molly. I came home one day, and Trish greeted me right outside the front door on the little porch we had. Holding Molly, Alexa running around at her feet. I can still picture it like it was yesterday. But in addition to holding Molly, Trish was also holding a little rectangular piece of plastic, which she handed to me. I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to read it. Plus or minus, I didn't know what it meant. But I knew it from Trish's excitement, and she said, "We're pregnant." She was as happy as I'd ever seen her. Now, if you're picking up on where we're at so far, Alexa coming along in the middle of law school, Molly in between there, this was a surprise to me. We never really planned any of this. It just kind of came along. But it worked out okay. Now, during this time, I was very busy with a lawsuit in Idaho, of all places, working crazy hours and traveling to Idaho about every week. Hannah was born in December, and I continued to work these ridiculous hours and was gone from home nearly all the time into the spring. And my absence was very hard on our young family and me personally. Worse, we were getting ready to start a trial that was expected to last for 4 months, and when that started, I wouldn't be able to leave at all and have to stay in Idaho. Luckily for us, we became good friends with our Idaho attorney, Ted Creason, and his wife, Marcia, who were also very devoted parents, who understood Trish and my pain at being separated and me apart from the kids. Well, Ted and Marcia invited Trish and the kids to move to Lewiston, Idaho, and live with them during the trial. We took them up on it, and so for the first half of 1997, we lived in Idaho with the Creasons. I tell this story because we lost that trial in June of 97, and we lost bad. It was a $95 million verdict against our client. At the time, that was the largest commercial verdict in the state of Idaho. And one of the key issues in the case was whether our client, a company in Wisconsin, could receive a fair trial in this little mill town in Idaho, where the factory that we were up against employed literally half of the people in the town. And we argued, presented facts and evidence and jury consultants and everything else, that the entire city was hostile to our client. The jury was prejudiced. They hated us. It was awful. No way anything positive could happen there. Well, when the $95 million verdict came down, it was front page news in the city of Lewiston. And these are our opponents here. They're celebrating, getting ready to head to the bar. Well, the bottom half of the paper was Trish holding Hannah, because apparently that day Trish was also giving interviews. Despite our legal argument that the court and the entire county, probably the state, was hostile and prejudiced, Trish didn't see it that way. She told the paper how much we loved Idaho. She said how nice everyone was. despite our love of Idaho, we returned to Chicago. We bought our first home in Gurnee later in 1997, and Jake was born in December of 98. Now, if you don't know this about us, 3 of 4 kids were born the first week of December. Hannah on December 2nd, Jake December 4, Alexa on December 6th. Molly's the odd one out with a birthday in June. None of this was planned, of course, as I mentioned, but I don't think you could plan that if you tried. But this has led, with those 3 birthdays in 5 days, to what we call birthday week. Trish always went all out for birthday week. And Trish's birthday was on December 20th, very close to Christmas. And she always had this paranoia that there was a birthday that would be unrecognized. I think because she was so close to the Christmas holiday that she took birthdays very seriously. She had a large poster made that we've hung for years over the table all week long. We get up early each morning to celebrate each birthday in turn and unwrap presents. In addition to the early morning celebration, Trish always planned some type of party for each of the kids. Trish loved birthdays and holidays and did everything she could to make each of the kids' birthdays special. This was not easy with 3 of the birthdays coming so close together. So we always had a very busy and fun time for the holidays. You've also probably seen our Christmas card, which includes our best pictures of the year, which don't just magically appear. We have to debate and decide. And one kid says they're not in there enough, and one's in there too much, and one doesn't like the picture, so that takes a little while every December. We've been making and sending those out since 1997. And then there's the Christmas tree, the decorations and lights, which Trish loves and always loved and wants to spend a lot of time on. And she always wants them up right after Thanksgiving, if not Thanksgiving weekend. This was important to her to have as much time as possible to celebrate the holidays. So first we had Thanksgiving, then the Christmas decorations and lights, then birthday week, then the Christmas card, then Trish's birthday, then Christmas, New Year's. And despite this hectic and busy schedule, Trish loved this time of year and went all out to make it a special time for our families. In 2002, we moved to West Lafayette. I started my own business, and we made our home here. And Trish began devoting all of her time not just to the kids who were older and all in school by then, but also to the kids' schools. And when the girls got to middle school, Trish became the cheerleading coach, and Trish loved that job. And I saw a lot of the girls that came through, some in college now, that were with Trish, and all loved her very much, and and she loved them, and was pleased to be part of their life. Trish was also involved in many volunteer activities, as Skip mentioned. Her greatest passion was working with the Smith Family Breakthrough Fund, and I want to thank everyone who's donated money to the fund in honor of Trish. But Trish was instrumental in starting and running the Smith's annual golf outing and auction each summer, August, to raise money to research awful Niemann-Pick type C disease. Trish was diagnosed with colon cancer May 20th, 2011. Before I mention, I just want to say a little bit about that, but I want to mention a few things that Trish loved and that she did the year before being diagnosed with colon cancer. Trish loved to travel. She was always plotting and scheming on next vacation, where we were going to go, what we were going to do. She was very interested in the royal family. She always followed Princess Diana. Trish and Dee had gone to, or had watched the first royal wedding as young girls, and Trish followed the trials and tribulations of the royal family. Not just the modern one, but had read a lot of books about the historical kings and King Henry VIII and all that going way back. And in our last vacation, I picked one of her books about the 100 Years' War and kind of got into it. I mean, they were all killing each other, and it's interesting stuff. Trish loved fashion, and Trish loved the Today Show. Every morning, she watched the Today Show, and I, of course, picked up on it over the years. And I think the Today Show is kind of it very much matched Trish's personality. I mean, you had the news, you had the serious stuff, at least in the 7 to 8 o'clock hour, but they were above breaking out the bowls and cooking something and giving some instruction on that, or seeing what the latest fashion is, or if some celebrity had goofed up or done something particularly newsworthy, that would make the Today Show. And I think if you see the Today Show in the coming weeks, I hope you'll think of Trish, and it pretty much encapsulates all the things she was interested in. So anyway, in that year before Trish was diagnosed, we got to take some great trips, had some great vacations, went to the Super Bowl of all places. Trish, though, took with Dee what really was the trip of a lifetime, and went to the second, or the more recent royal wedding. Trish and Dee were right on the, they got there early for the parade and saw all the vehicles go by, and Trish was sending back these pictures that were just amazing of all the things that they did. Of course, she also got to wear get a special hat and buy some clothes and all that, and get into the fashion of it. And of course, all the news groups, organizations were there, and Trish and Dee had traveled before, been to New York City, and whenever they did, they'd go to the Today Show and get right up there in the front row and yell at Willard and all those people. Well, I started getting texts one morning, and Julie Smith sent over a movie. Trish and Dee were actually on the Today Show. They had zoomed in on them on the front line in Trafalgar Square. So many of Trish's passions came together with that trip. Trish came home, and we closed on the clothing store, which was really Trish's dream come true, to own a clothing store, and she was so excited about being involved with that. Unfortunately, about 3 weeks later, Trish started having some health issues, went into the hospital, and was diagnosed with colon cancer. Very early on, we were not getting good news from the very beginning. A large mass has been found in Trish's colon, and the cancer had spread to her lungs and her liver, the lining of her abdominal wall, and her lymph nodes. Not good. Trish and I and Stephen traveled to Mayo Clinic. Trish had surgery. They removed the mass in her colon, and when the surgeon came out afterwards, she told us how Trish was doing, and I asked her. I said, "Well, what's the prognosis? What does this mean?" And the surgeon told me, "If you ask me that question, I have to give you a truthful answer." That's never. I knew it certainly couldn't be good. But the surgeon told me Trish might had anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. And any longer than 5 years would be a miracle. Because of the spread of the cancer, there was no surgeries to remove it. It was too extensive. There were no special treatments or anything. The best you could hope for is that chemo would slow down its growth. Of course, we had also researched things and learned quickly that it simply wasn't a cure. It was a matter of getting as much time as possible with Trish. Now, of course, Trish, when we got one of the reports back, that we got cancer in the lungs, liver, abdominal wall, all over the place. One of them was in the lymph nodes. There was cancer found in 5 of 25 lymph nodes. Trish thought this was great news. Only 5 of 25. That's a great ratio. Of course, that's just indicative of Trish's spirit. It's like being shot 5 times rather than 25 times, but that was how she looked at things. A very smart person told me during all this that after the diagnosis like Trish received, there are often 3 possible reactions. You can give up, you can travel, see as much as you can, or just keep on with life and do the best you can in everyday life. And that's what we did. The third one, we tried to, as Skip mentioned, keep calm and carry on. We took Alexa to school in Miami. We returned a month later for Parents' Weekend. We were faced with a big decision with this new store that we just bought because financially we needed to have Trish in there every day, running things, and that was the original plan. But as sick as she was, she couldn't be in there every day. So we were faced with the decision we needed to either close the store or expand it to where it could support having a manager and a bigger operation. Now, if you know us, the decision, it wasn't really much of a decision. We just plugged along, went all in. And it was really a crazy decision. Here we had a limited amount of time left with Trish. And rather than cherishing that, or sitting around, looking at picture albums or something, we just pressed on with life. And it worked out very well. Skip mentioned that we finished the store with his leadership and a lot of effort from his family in finishing the store and moving it in December and January of this year, some of Trish's last healthy time. But what it gave us, and what it gave everyone, if you were involved with it, was a chance to do something for Trish. And it was neat from the perspective of the women that helped with the curtains and the clothes and the support, to the guys who laid the floor, who did drywall, electrical. It was really a mesh of everyone being able to give whatever strengths or interests they had and take that and give something to Trish and see a tangible result from it. You can walk in there now and it's this beautiful, beautiful store that just couldn't have been done with all the help and support of everyone. And I'm so proud that we were able to do that for Trish and in what ended up being her final months. And I thank everyone for all their efforts in doing that. And through all this, Trish never gave up hope. Even 2 weeks ago, Trish was planning to go to a trade show in Chicago. She was on oxygen at the time, could barely leave the house, and wanted to get a hotel near the StyleMax trade show so that she wouldn't have to walk too far. I made the reservation. I looked forward to going, but it simply was not realistic. But that was Trish's mindset, and that was the way she got through this. Was that it just wasn't real. It was not something that we were going to let us hold back until physically it became impossible for her to do what she wanted to do. And even in her final couple weeks, the final week, as I would tell Trish how much I love you, how the kids were going to be okay, she would say, "Stop, you're scaring me." Simply not the end result that eventually came wasn't something that Trish wanted to consider. I think until her second to last day, and the girls mentioned it, Trish was, I think, accepting and understanding where this would end up, and she told the girls to see the world. When Trish was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't think it could get any worse than that. We'd been robbed of our future. I thought that was bad. That was pretty bad. When Trish started chemo, was taken out of the game nearly half the time every couple of weeks. I thought, this is bad. It couldn't get any worse. When the chemo stopped working and we lost and were robbed of hope that Trish could get better or at least have an extended life, I thought again, it can't get any worse. This is as bad as it gets. But then Trish really started getting sicker, couldn't leave the house, had to be on oxygen all the time. And I thought, it can't get any worse. And then Trish could no longer talk to us, could no longer express and hold a conversation, that seemed bad. And then she could no longer respond even. And then finally, in the end, the last couple of days, she was struggling just to breathe. I thought again, it can't get any worse. Each time it did. Well, I'm here to say now, after 7 or 8 times being wrong, I'm pretty confident it can't get any worse. Which means one thing, it's only going to get better. Nothing can prepare you for this, but I think in the last 10 months, as we've seen Trish battle with cancer and have to be taken out of the game, you guys have had to rely on me much more. Alexa, a few weeks ago, the dinner in Miami with your friends, your mom would have wanted to be there. She wasn't, but I was. Molly, the shopping trip in New York, that was something that had your mom written all over it. She'd have loved to be there. She couldn't be there, but I was. Hannah, the cheerleading camp in Atlanta. 30,000 cheerleaders. Your mom did really, she loved that. She wanted to be there. and couldn't be, but I was there. Jake, I'm always there. But your mom wanted to be there too. I think that you have two parents. You have two parents for the same reason that you have two eyes. If one gets poked out and you lose one, you can still see. Not as well. You may not be able to judge depth and speed as well. You can still see. I'll be that one eye. I'd like to end with a little story or share something that I learned in going through this process. I mentioned how important music was to us and how we discovered meanings that we never knew in many songs. When Paul McCartney of the Beatles was 14 years old, his mother died of cancer. And his mother, her name was Mary. And Paul McCartney later said that his mother would come to him in dreams and actually speak to him. And Paul McCartney's mother, Mary, came to him in a dream one time and told him, "Everything will be all right. Let it be." Which was the inspiration for him to later write the words for the song, "Let It Be." I think you'll find that your mother will continue to speak to you. And whether it's in dreams or a voice in your head or where it comes from, I think that your mother is a part of you, both biologically and in the way you were raised, in every thought and every decision you make. And she will continue to be there, guiding you, helping you make the right decisions, and helping you get through life. Now, we're going to still have weddings. We're still going to have graduations. We're going to have games. And there will be an empty seat at those. But your mother will still be with you in your heart, helping you to get through things, and so on. Thank you.